In this tutorial, I want to show you a really cool FileMaker technique that can help you add a leading zero next to your number, just like this. Hey, what is up everybody? Welcome to another FileMaker Beginner tutorial. My name is Sunny Chu, and today we are going to work on a really interesting FileMaker calculation technique to help you add a leading zero to some of your numbers. So as you can see in the start of this video, I have this file right here and I have a set of number on the left side. Now my goal here is I want to convert all of these number into like a 4-digit value. And if it's like a smaller digit number, I'm going to give it a leading zero, which is going to work like this. So 1, it's going to convert it to 0001. 8 is going to be converted to 0008. Now, the tricky part about this technique is that you want to have some sort of way for you to add 30 to the single digit number. If it's 12, we only really need 2 leading zero. So this technique is going to help you cater for this kind of situation, and regardless of how many digits you're going to have, it's always going to give you a 4-digit result as the final outcome. That's roughly what we are going to be working on in this tutorial, but there's actually a twist to it. And the twist is we are not going to be working on this specific demo file. And the reason being is that I think just learning this technique is not going to help you much in terms of actual business database value. And I want to put this technique into a scenario where it's like an actual business operation that can make use of this technique in a meaningful way. And so that's why we are going to be working on the before and after file that I have included in this tutorial. And it's going to be slightly different, as you can see in here. There's like a 2-page database in here. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about what's happening in here. But just in case, if you're just looking for a quick answer to the leading zero question, you can skip straight to the timestamp that I'm showing you in the screen right now, and it will lead you straight into the answer of this formula. So let's start the main part of this tutorial. Now, the first thing I want to show you is probably to close this sample file, and I'm just going to leave the before file here. And what I want to do is I want to open this PowerPoint just to explain to you the situation that I am trying to show you. So I want to start off by explaining a little bit of context behind why I'm using that technique. So basically, a few years back, I was just starting to become a FileMaker developer. And one of the problems that I face is I need to send different customer their invoice. And each invoice is going to have some IDs in it. So for example, maybe the first invoice is going to be IN01, and I'm going to be sending this to Sean Wall. And then the next one is going to be IN02. This is sent to Tom Smith. And then IN03, 4, and 5, etc., etc. So normally this type of ID doesn't really affect me that much, but in my specific case, I feel like it's probably not the best way to do it, because Sean Wall can look into my invoice 01 and 03 and kind of guess that I have a 02 in between. And he can kind of use this to estimate how much business I'm doing in between these two periods. Now, normally for normal types of clients, this should be fine. But a lot of my clients, they are also FileMaker developer themselves. So technically, we are kind of competitor. And I want to keep some of these business data kind of as my personal privacy as possible. So I came up with a solution. Now, what I did is that I give each of the customer a shortcode. So for example, Sean Wall is going to be SW and Tom Smith is going to be TS. So instead of using IN01, 02, 03, 04, the method that I showed you just now, what I did is I am using a new set of code, kind of like this. So as you can see, the first invoice that is sent to Sean Wall is going to be SW_01. And the second one is going to be SW_02. And then for Tom Smith, it's going to be the same thing, but TS01, 02, 03. So using this method, I am able to kind of create like a unique code and a unique invoice number for each of my client. And I don't have to worry about them being able to kind of like guess how much invoice are in between. So this is what I'm aiming for. And to give you a better idea of the invoice ID structure that I'm using just now, what I did is the first 2 number is going to be the short code that I just showed you. So this is Sean Wall, So this is the customer code. And then I'm going to add a underscore in between. And then I'm also going to be having an invoice number here for that particular customer. So basically, if this is 12, that means this is the 12th invoice that I am sending to Sean Wall. Now, you can see in here that I am having kind of like this 12 in here, which is a 2-digit value. And I need to add a leading 0 on the left side of it to keep the whole invoice ID structure in like a consistent manner with like 6 characters. So SW_012. So I want to keep the numbering thing under a kind of like a 3-digit kind of structure. So that's when the leading 0 thing comes in. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to work from start to finish, how to create this mechanic here. And we're going to break this into 3 parts. So the first part is going to be working on this SW thing. The second part is we are going to try to get the number 12 in here, or whatever the invoice count of that customer. And then the final part, we're going to work on the leading 0. So 3 part, we're going to work step by step, and we are going to start working on our file right now. And we are back to the desktop. So let me just close up this PowerPoint for a minute, and I want to show you the after file for this tutorial, and I am going to explain to you what we're going to do. So basically, if I open this after file, and let me just open another window. Inside this file, there's going to be 2 pages in it. In the left side here, we have a customer table with 3 customers, Sean Wall, Tom Smith, and Joe Johnson. And each of them is also given a shortcode, SW, TS, and JJ. And on the right side here, we have the invoice table. So this is not an actual invoice, but more like a representation of the invoice. But inside the database, we have kind of set up a one-to-many relationship where one customer can have multiple invoice items in it. And this is a very simplistic version of that invoice. Now, I've also set up a mechanics in here where I can select the customer ID in here, and then it's going to automatically relate the customer name and also the shortcode in here like this. So it's like a mini feature to help you work with this database. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to create a feature to help us get the ID. So for example, right now, Sean Wall has 1 invoice inside this database at this moment. If I create the second one and click get ID, it's going to get me SW_002. And if I create another one here and let me do Joe Johnson, and he doesn't have any invoice just yet, but just this one. And if I click get ID now, it's going to give me JJ_001. So using this method, we are able to kind of like replicate what I was saying inside this slide with this structure that I was mentioning just now. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do. And let me just close this up and let me just go and minimize the after file. And what I want to do is I want to open the before file. And same thing for the before file, let me open another window right here. And this is also a 2 layout database like this. So basically the before file and after file looks exactly the same in terms of database layout, but the only difference is I haven't set up this get ID feature. Basically, if I click this right now, it's just going to say hello because inside the get ID place, I'm creating a custom dialog here that says hello. So let's start by going through the first step. And the first step, what we're trying to do is I want to try to create this SW_ feature. So when I click get ID, I want to at least get the customer shortcode that I listed here. Now, as you can see, if I create a new customer record and I select the customer ID, for example, Tom Smith, I'm able to relate the shortcode for Tom Smith inside this table. So if I change it to TS1, it's also going to change on this side. So they're kind of related. Now, what I want to do is I want to, well, let me confirm this first. What I want to do is I want to make it so that I'm able to get this shortcode and also the underscore. And so let me just quickly visualize what we're going to do inside this script. So delete this. First step, I want to get the SW shortcode or whatever customer code they have. And then I'm going to apply it into the invoice ID field. So that's the first two steps that we're going to work on. Now, let's have a look here. First step, I want to set a variable, set variable script step, and I'm going to set a variable that is called, let's call this shortcode, like this. And inside the specified calculation, what I want to do is I want to go all the way to the customer table to grab the shortcode. So this should be pretty straightforward. Now, once I grab the shortcode, I'm going to apply it into this invoice ID. So I'm going to use a set field here. And I want to try to target this invoice ID field that I have in here. So if I click this now and target invoice table, invoice ID, click this, and for the calculation result, I want to grab this shortcode and paste it into the calculation result. So it's going to be like shortcode, and then I also want an underscore, so it's going to be and then quotation mark, and inside the quotation mark, I'm going to write underscore here. Click OK, and let me just quickly save this, and since this is already applied to get ID here, so let me just quickly remove whatever I have in here and try to see if that script works. Click, click. So I think we have the first part done. So let's move on to the next part. For the next part, what we want to do is I want to try to find how many existing invoice that each customer have and use that accordingly to create my ID number here. So for example, Sean Wall here, this is his first invoice. So it's going to be like number 1. And for example, if I create another invoice for Sean Wall here, get ID, this should be number 2. And at the same time, Tom Smith, this is his first invoice, it'll be number 1. Now, at this point in time, it's not going to have the leading 0 in here. So if it gets to like 10 or 100, it's going to be like 12, 13. So without that leading 0 on the left side. So this is what we're trying to work on in stage 2. And let's see how we can do it. Now, this whole operation is going to be a little bit more complex. So I want to run you through how to do it manually before I actually get into the script. Now, if I want to do this manually, what I will have to do is, for example, when I create a new record here, and let's say this is Sean Wall, when I click onto get ID, I think the first step is it needs to save this shortcode, just like we did just now. I'm going to save this in my brain, and then I will have to remember this customer ID. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new window, and I am going to go into find mode here. I just clicked Command F to go into find mode quickly, and I'm going to try to find Sean Wall. And when I click enter, I'm going to find 3 total invoice for Sean Wall. So here is the number 3 here, which is the found count. And I'm going to remember this found count as number 3. And I'm going to close this window, and I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to combine what I have before. So the shortcode, underscore, and the found count of number 3. So the final answer, I'm going to apply it to SW underscore 3 like this. So that's the general step of how we're going to do this manually. So what I want to do right now is I want to plot this into our script using comment. So if I want to apply my manual action and try to comment into this script, what I need to do is do something like this. So the first step, I need to remember the customer shortcode. So this is the step that we have already done. So it's basically done. Now, the next step, what we need to do is to remember the customer ID so that we can search for that customer later on. So remember the customer ID. And then what we're going to do is we are going to click here, create a new window to ready for our finding action. So let me just quickly comment into the script, create a new window. Now, once we have this new window, we want to search for customer who is also sharing the same customer ID code here. So what we want to do is search for customer with same customer ID. And let me just quickly do that. So C01, click enter. And once we have the finding result, we're going to take the result of the found counts that we have, so 3 in this case, and save it in our brain for now. And so let's do it here. Store our found count result. And then once we're done with the finding action, we're going to quickly close this window and go back to the original page that we were in. So we are going to close the window and then go back to the original page. And then finally, we are going to apply what we saved it into this invoice ID field. So we already have this script here. And we are going to add in additionally, not only the underscore and the shortcode, we're also going to add in the found count that we saved. So let's see how am I going to execute this script step inside the actual script here. So let's start from here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remember the customer ID here. So I'm going to write SV, that stands for set variable. And I'm going to create a variable that's called customer ID. And I'm going to save the value of invoice and then get the customer ID of that invoice. Click OK. So basically what I'm doing now is I'm saving this field here, the customer ID. Click OK. And then I'm going to create a new window. So it's pretty self-explanatory, as there is a script step that is called new window here. And we are using the current layout. So when we create a new window, if we are starting from this blue layout, when we create a new window, it's also going to be using the blue layout for our new window. So that's the second step, new window. And what we want to do next is then trying to find how many other invoice that is sharing the same customer ID. So perform find, specify new. We want to find other invoice who also share the same customer ID of the customer ID variable that we just saved it. So just now we have saved it a variable with customer ID, and we are trying to find all the other invoice that shares the same customer. That's the third step. So remember the ID, new window, and try to find the same ID. And then once we have the result, we want to store our result as like a variable value. So we want to create a variable here, and let's call this the count result. And then I'm going to use a function here to get found count. Click OK. So basically what get found count do is that, for example, if I search here and I search C001, you will notice that I have 3 out of 4 record was found. So get found count is going to give you the number 3 on the top here. And that's the idea. So I'm going to be saving the found count that I have. And once I save this, I am going to close the window because I've already done what I need to. And then finally, inside my last script step, I'm going to apply my information into this invoice ID field. So I'm going to create and also the count result here. So right now, our final calculation is going to be consist of 3 blocks of data. The first one is the shortcode. The second one is the underscore separator. And the third one is the count result that we just saved. So let's click OK and let's save this. Now, before we continue, just note that it's always good to commit your record. Do it like this. Commit your record before creating a new window. It's a little bit difficult to explain why, but basically if you're doing it in a script, it's almost always good to, well, commit first before you create a new window. And I'm going to save this, and I am going to go back here, and we're going to test out our script. So right now we have Sean Wall here with 2 existing invoice, and this is the third invoice that we don't have an ID yet. So when I click get ID, it's going to give me SW_3. Now let's quickly try and create a new one here with let's say Tom Smith. So he already have 1 invoice existing. So the next one we get should be TS_2. So overall, this thing is working out pretty well so far. And so let's move on to the final step, which is to add a leading 0 of 3 digits total and into our invoice ID. So before I get into the actual solution, let me just quickly go into my PowerPoint, as there's one very important function that you need to understand first. And that is this right function in here. Now, the right function consists of two sets of parameters. Number one is the text itself, and number two is the character count. So the text is basically meaning the original text, while the character count means that counting from the right hand side, how many characters I want to extract. It probably doesn't make too much sense at this point, so I want to use a real life example to work on this. So let's say I do right, and I have the word sunny in here as the first parameter, and the second parameter I have number 3. Now what this is going to do is it's going to count from the right hand side 1, 2, and 3. So the final answer I'm going to get after running this function, it's going to be and y, like this. So that's basically what it does. It's pretty simple. Now, how does that relate to the leading zero question that we have? So if I click to the next slide, and I'm going to give you an example. So let's say I have 3 numbers in here, 1, 12, and 420. So these are basically the numbers in our calculation. Now what I can do is I want to add another 4 zeros, or maybe 10, 20, it doesn't really matter. Like, give it a little bit more zero. And what's going to happen is, if I add them together, it's going to look like this. Now, we're going to combine this and use the right function and mark number 3 here. So it's going to count from the right hand side and get the first 3 digits that it found. So in this case, we are going to be able to extract the leading 0 in here and get 001, 012, and 420. Now, since 420 is already 3 digit, we don't really need any more additional 0 to help it. So using this method, we're going to be able to use this very simple function to be able to create different amounts of leading 0 that we need, depending on the number we have. So that's what we're going to do inside our case, and let's see how we can apply this back into our final result. So let me just go to the script again, and we're going to work on this final part. Now, on this step 15 here, we have a get found count here, and this is what we are going to be working on in this part. And let me just double click into it and get into the calculation. So basically, the get found count thing in here, it's basically our number. And what we want to do is to do similar things. I want to add a 4 digit of a 0 in here. And what we want to do next is to add the right function to quote them together. And then in the second parameter, I am going to add 3 here. So it's basically the same thing. We have 000 plus the found count, and then we're going to get the first 3 digit starting to count from the right hand side. So we're always going to have the leading 0 on the left hand side if needed. So click OK, and basically we have now created a mechanics where we're going to trim the found count result. Not exactly trim, but polish the found count result to have the leading 0, and then we're going to apply it at the end as usual. So save this, and I think we are ready to test out our final script. And let's get back into our layout. And before I reveal the final answer to see if our script is going to work or not, I just want to give you a very quick plug on my course, FileMaker DIY Automator. It's basically a FileMaker course for business user who is totally new to FileMaker and have no programming experience. And I'm going to guide you through step by step into learning all the most essential and most important feature in FileMaker, such as scripting and relationship. And if you want to learn more, just go into the link in the description down below and you will find it there. And now for the final part of this tutorial, let's test out our script. Now what I want to do first is just to delete all the existing records so we don't mess up anything. Now I want to create a new record, and I'm going to target Sean Wall here. And if everything works, I should have SW underscore 001 as the answer. So ready, set, go. So we have SW underscore 001 here. If we create another one for Sean Wall, it's going to be SW002, new one, that this time maybe for Joe Johnson, click get ID, it's going to be JJ underscore 001. So I think we have successfully completed the goal of this tutorial. Now, what I want to extend a little bit more is this method is actually something that I find very useful because of a few reasons. Now, if you are just using a normal serial number like this, so I'm just creating a sample here. If I click new, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This serial number is just like a sequential incrementation. It doesn't give you much information about the invoice itself. And in this case, in our serial number here, the new one, we are able to see very quickly which customer this belongs to and how much other invoice we have opened for this customer. And in one of my case for one of my other clients, he actually used a structure that looks like this, his type of invoice. So basically he do something like this for each of his retail orders. So 2020 03 15 012. So basically the first 4 digits is the year, the month, and the day, and also the number count of invoice for that day. So using this method, he's able to have a, although quite a long invoice ID, but it gives you a lot of information while also maintaining the factor that this is a unique number within their database. So I think it's definitely something that you can consider adding into your own solution. And it's not a very difficult technique, but I just thought that this right technique, it's something really interesting. So that's basically it for this tutorial. Hope you enjoy, and I will see you in the next one.